Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be sharing with you some presidential recommendations. So all of the recommendations that I'm going to have in this particular list are all going to deal in some way with the US presidents, whether the president themselves are in the book or it's focused on one of the first ladies, or if it's focused on their children, just anything that features that group of characters, if you will, some combination. So yeah, I have 10 recommendations here, and as always, I'm going to be looking down at my computer. I'm going to be on Goodreads, so yeah, if you want to listen to me in the background, pull up your Goodreads, and if you want to add any of these to your want to read list, feel free to do so. First up, Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. It's February 1862. The Civil War is less than 1 year old. The fighting has begun in earnest, and the nation has begun to realize it is in for a long, bloody struggle. Meanwhile, President Lincoln's beloved 11-year-old son Willie lies upstairs in the White House, gravely ill. In a matter of days, despite predictions of a recovery, Willie dies and is laid to rest in a Georgetown cemetery. "My poor boy, he was too good for this earth," the president says at the time. "God has called him home." Newspapers report that a grief-stricken Lincoln returned to the crypt several times alone to hold his boy's body. From that seed of historical truth, George Saunders spins an unforgettable story of familial love and loss that breaks free of its realistic historical framework into a thrilling supernatural realm, both hilarious and terrifying. Willie Lincoln finds himself in a strange purgatory where ghosts mingle, gripe, commiserate, quarrel, and enact bizarre acts of penance. Within this transitional state, called in the Tibetan tradition the Bardo, a monumental struggle erupts over young Willie's soul. Oh my god, this sounds so bizarre, but really good. I remember this book coming out, and I never really picked it up to look at the plot synopsis. This seriously sounds really good and unique and different. I've got to pick this up. Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker by Jennifer Chiaverini. I'm probably butchering her last name there. In March 1861, Mrs. Lincoln chose Keckley from among a number of applicants to be her personal modiste, responsible not only for creating the First Lady's gowns, but also for dressing Mrs. Lincoln in the beautiful attire Keckley had fashioned. The relationship between the two women quickly evolved, as Keckley was drawn into the intimate life of the Lincoln family, supporting Mary Todd Lincoln in the loss of first her son and then her husband to the assassination that stunned the nation and the world. Keckley saved scraps from the dozens of gowns she made for Mrs. Lincoln, eventually piecing together a tribute known as the Mary Todd Lincoln quilt. She also saved memories, which she fashioned into a book, Behind the Scenes, 30 Years a Slave and 4 Years in the White House. Upon its publication, Keckley's memoir created a scandal that compelled Mary Todd Lincoln to sever all ties with her. Oh my goodness. But in the decades since, Keckley's story has languished in the archives. In this impeccably research engrossing novel, the author brings history to life in a rich, moving style. Ooh, that sounds really good too. And they called it Camelot, a novel of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis by Stephanie Marie Thornton. Few of us can claim to be authors of our fates. Jacqueline Kennedy knows no other choice. With the eyes of the world watching, Jackie uses her effortless charm and keen intelligence to carve a place for herself among the men of history and weave a fairy tale for the American people, embodying a senator's wife, a devoted mother, a first lady, a queen in her own right. But all reigns must come to an end. Once JFK travels to Dallas and the clock ticks down those 1,000 days of magic in Camelot, Jackie is forced to pick up the ruined fragments of her life and forge herself into a new identity that is all her own, that of an American legend. Mrs. Grant and Madame Jewel, and this is also by Jennifer Chiaverini. In 1844, Missouri belle Julia Dent met dazzling horseman Lieutenant Ulysses S. Grant. 4 years passed before their parents permitted them to wed, and the groom's abolitionist family refused to attend the ceremony. Since childhood, Julia owned as a slave another Julia, known as Jewel. Jewel guarded her mistress's closely held twin secrets. She had perilously poor vision, but was gifted with prophetic sight. So it was that Jewel became Julia's eyes to the world, and what a world it was, marked by gathering clouds of war. The Grants vowed never to be separated, but as Ulysses rose through the ranks, becoming General-in-Chief of the Union Army, so did the stakes of their pact. During the war, Julia would travel, often in the company of Jewel and the 4 Grant children, facing unreliable transportation and certain danger to be to be at her husband's side. Yet Julia and Jewel saw two different wars. While Julia spoke out for women, Union and Confederate, she continued to hold Jewel as a slave behind Union lines. Upon the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, Jewel claimed her freedom and rose to prominence as a businesswoman in her own right, taking the honorary title Madam. The two women's paths continued to cross throughout the Grant's White House years in Washington, D.C., and later in New York City, the site of Grant's tomb. Ike and Kay by James McManus. In 1942, Kay Summersby life is changed forever when she is conscripted to drive General Eisenhower on his fact-finding visit to wartime London. Despite Eisenhower's marriage to Mamie, the pair takes an immediate liking to each other, and he buys Kay a rare wartime luxury, a box of chocolates. Now I'm thinking about Forrest Gump, you guys. So begins a tumultuous relationship that, against all military regulations, sees Kay traveling with Eisenhower on missions to far-flung places before the final assault on Nazi Germany. The general does dangerously little to conceal his affair with the woman widely known as Ike's shadow, and in letters Mamie bemoans his new obsession with Ireland. That does not stop him from using his influence to grant Kay citizenship and rank in the U.S. Army, drawing her closer still when he returns to America. When officials discover Eisenhower's plans to divorce from his wife, they threaten the fragile but passionate affair, and Kay is forced to take desperate measures to hold on to the man she loves. Ooh. If a Poem Could Talk and Breathe, a novel of Teddy Roosevelt's first love. And this is a book that actually is not out yet. It says down here it's coming out in 2023. Taking place in Cambridge, 1878, the era of the Gilded Age, Alice Lee sets out to break from the norms of her mother's generation. Women are fighting for educational opportunities, and exploring a new sense of intellectual and personal freedom. Native New Yorker Harvard student Teddy Roosevelt is on his own journey of discovery, and when they meet, unrelenting currents of love change the trajectory of his life forever. American Princess, a novel of first daughter Alice Roosevelt, and this is by Stephanie Marie Thornton. Alice may be the president's daughter, but she's nobody's darling. As bold as her signature color, Alice Blue, the gum-chewing, cigarette-smoking, poker-playing first daughter discovers that the only way for a woman to stand out in Washington is to make waves, oceans of them. With the canny sophistication of the savviest politician on the Hill, Alice uses her celebrity to her advantage, testing the limits of her power and the seductive thrill of political engagements. But Washington, D.C. is rife with heartaches and betrayals, and when Alice falls hard for a smooth-talking congressman, it will take everything this rebel has to emerge triumphant and claim her place as an American icon. As Alice soldiers through the devastation of two world wars and brazens out a cutting feud with her famous Roosevelt cousins, it's no wonder everyone in the Capitol refers to her as the other Washington Monument, and Alice intends to outlast them all. America's First Daughter by Stephanie Dray and Laura Kamoy. This is a book that I have read and enjoyed. I freaking love this book, you guys. From her earliest days, Patsy Jefferson knows that though her father loves his family dearly, his devotion to his country runs deeper still. As Thomas Jefferson's oldest daughter, she becomes his helpmate, protector, and constant companion in the wake of her mother's death, traveling with him when he becomes American minister to France. It is in Paris, at the glittering court, and among the first tumultuous days of revolution, that 15-year-old Patsy learns about her father's troubling liaison with Sally Hemings, a slave girl her own age. Meanwhile, Patsy has fallen in love with her father's protege, William Short, a staunch abolitionist and ambitious diplomat. Torn between love, principles, and the bonds of family, Patsy questions whether she can choose a life as William's wife and still be a devoted daughter. Lucy by Ellen Feldman. On the eve of World War I, Assistant Secretary of the Navy Franklin Delano Roosevelt, fiercely ambitious and still untouched by polio, falls in love with his wife's social secretary, Lucy Mercer. Eleanor stumbles on their letters, and divorce is discussed, but honor and ambition win out. Franklin promises he will never see Lucy again. But Franklin and Lucy do meet again, and again they fall in love, as he prepares to run for an unprecedented third term and lead America into war. Franklin turns to Lucy for the warmth and unconditional approval Eleanor is unable to give. Martha by Susan Holloway Scott, and this is another book that looks like it's coming out in 2023. When 18-year-old Martha Dandridge marries Daniel Park Custis, all agree she has done remarkably well to fall in love with and land one of the wealthiest men in the Virginia colony. Their union is a happy one until after 7 years and 4 children, Daniel dies suddenly. Resilient and beautiful, Martha is soon courted by other men and becomes engaged to a military hero, Colonel George Washington. You know, I didn't know that. I didn't know Martha Washington was married before George Washington. I don't think I knew that. The newlyweds' mutual affection and attraction is obvious to all. At 26, George is handsome, athletic, and over a foot taller than petite Martha. She and her 2 surviving children move to Mount Vernon, where Martha's fortune enables George to improve his estate and establish himself as a political power. Where once Martha envisioned a sedate life as a planter's wife, now a very different future beckons. So you guys, that is it for my recommendations that are in some way presidential, with the presidents themselves, or the first ladies, or their children. Something like that. Are there any books that I have left off of this list? I feel like I have, because I really was struggling with this list. I was really trying to find some books, especially like, you know, more recently written books, you know, not like older ones. But yeah, if I have left anything important off this list, let me know. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you might like these other videos. Bye guys.